because, point the camera at me, huh? You don't really want to be inspecting from the front, because if you're in the front of the hive, you're going to trigger the guard bees, and you're kind of in the way of the foraging bees' flight path, and that creates chaos. And we don't want chaos. We want calm, relaxed bees, and we're doing this. Beekeeping is really relaxing and fun. We don't want to create chaos by getting right in the front of the hive when we're doing our inspection. So start from the back. If you look at this hive here, 2 deeps, then an excluder. We'll talk about a queen excluder in a little bit, and then 3 honey boxes. This bottom box here has got a hole in it. That's where I treat with oxalic acid for varroa mites. Before we open the colony, we'll talk about varroa and integrated pest management for a second. Varroa mites, or varroa destructors, are parasitic mite that feeds on the fat body of the bees. They're devastating to bee colonies. They spread viruses, they weaken the immune system, they make your bees more susceptible to other stresses like herbicides and pesticides, for example. And when you have bees that are not treated or not looked after, not monitored appropriately, and they swarm or they just drift into other colonies, they're taking those mites with them, and those mites then spread more virus and disease to other colonies. So all of us responsible beekeepers need to have a good integrated pest management strategy in place to be monitoring and testing for and treating for mites to keep our numbers low. And there's a threshold you're trying to get. You want to be testing at least 10% of your colonies once a month. Doing an alcohol wash is what we do. And you're looking to have less than 2% infestation rate April through July, and less than 3% infestation rate August through October. Although Randy Oliver will suggest if you see any mites, go ahead and treat. IPM involves using those treatment thresholds. And once you find your bees are above that threshold, you have multiple options for treatment. Inorganic acids, organic acids, there's lots of options that you can use. Also part of your integrated pest management, using things like screen bottom boards with a sticky pad underneath to collect the mites so you can count them. Using drone frames, where you put a drone frame in there, the queen will lay it up. That drone brood will get infested with mites. The mites don't only go after the drone brood, but the drone brood's capped longer than the other casts, so the mites have got longer to develop. So they have a predilection for drone brood. You wait till that drone frame's capped, chuck it in the freezer, kill off all the brood and also the mites, and then you put the frame back in again and let the process repeat. That in its own right is not enough to completely manage varroa, but it's part of your integrated pest management strategy, along with monitoring and testing and treating. Another really big thing is selecting for varroa sensitive bees, and having those bees in your apiary. And we're really big about that here. Although we raise a couple of hundred queens a year or more, we always bring in a handful of queens each year to try and improve our stock. And so that's always with the goal of more hygienic behavior. Bees that are grooming mites off, bees that are removing infected larvae, whether it be brood disease infected larvae or varroa infected larvae. For example, this year we brought in some Poline 2.2 queens, which is supposed to have very good hygienic behavior. We'll see how they do. We have Russian queens, Saskatraz queens, ankle biters, mite maulers that we've brought in over the years. Each successive round of queens we bring in with the goal of improving our genetic stock to move toward more hygienic bee behavior. So yeah, that's really it. I mean, you really want to spread the colonies out also to try and prevent drift. That's also part of your IPM, trying to prevent your bees from spreading varroa from one hive to the next. But really important as responsible beekeepers that we take that seriously. All right, let's take a quick look inside and see what we've got. And when you're doing your hive inspections, and you're starting from the back of the hive to avoid disturbing the bees in the front, everything should be slow and methodical and calm. We're looking not to rile our bees up. If you look at your hive tool, you've got a little paddle end and a little hook end. I like to use a little paddle end here and just gently wedge up underneath that outer cover and slowly lift it off. You've got to remember the inside of your beehive is dark. You suddenly rip the covers off and it's suddenly bright sunlight in there. It's going to get the bees fired up. So everything slowly, methodically. I like to turn my outer cover upside down. I'm going to put it on the other side this time around actually, so that my wife on the video camera can see what we're doing. I put that down there and then I can put the supers on top of it without squishing bees. Here's our inner cover, which is really there just to prevent the bees from propolizing the outer cover down onto the supers. Propolis is this sticky antimicrobial stuff that they make out of tree resin, and it's very, very sticky. All right, so pretty unlikely that my queen would be up here because I have an excluder on, but never say never. Take a quick look. These are all female worker bees. They all look pretty healthy. Don't see any drones up here, and I don't see our queen. So we'll very gently stand that up here. All right, so it's a pretty good nectar flow going on at the moment, as I've seen in my other colonies over the last week or two. So we'll see how much capped honey and how much nectar these girls have. This first honey super will just gently break the propolis seal, and it's heavy. So that's a good sign. There's probably a lot of honey in here. Just gently lift that off. Oh, well, we caught the frame below. We'll put this box down here on the edge of the outer cover rim so we don't squish as many bees as possible. That wasn't ideal, pulling that frame up with the one on both. We'll have a look and see what's going on in this colony here. You can give a little puff of smoke in the front door before you start inspections. I haven't found it super necessary if you're slow and methodical about things, but you can do that before you start. Put a little puff of smoke in the front door. So if we have a look down through this colony, it looks like most of these frames are capped honey. We'll try and pull one out and take a look. So again, we use a little paddle thing just to gently break the propolis seal between the frames. And then the little hook end, you can put into that gap there and wedge your frame up. When you're removing your frame, you want to go vertically. Try not to scrape the frame against the one next to it. Move slowly and carefully so you don't injure your bees. Okay, so what we're seeing here is a nice big frame of capped honey. This is dry wax cappings over the outside of our honey, which means this honey is less than 18% moisture content, and that's ready to extract. So that's good news, and it looks like all the other frames are the same. So this top box is ready for extraction. We'll gently put our frame back in, try not to squish any bees between your burr comb here. All right, very good. Let's have a look what's in our next box down. Just looking in from the top, this box looks to be about 3/4 full and capped. There is some uncapped honey in here also. Okay. Try not to squish any bees when you're doing this. Okay. Let's have a look and see what we've got in this box here. So again, we have capped honey across those 5 or 6 frames. It looks like the back of this one is not capped. So let's take a look at this. Again, you use your flat portion of your hive tool to just laterally wedge that to break the propolis seal. Now gradually lift that out. Let's have a look and see what we got. Lovely. Okay. So you can see on this frame here, we've got little worker bees. They look pretty healthy and happy going about their business. This is capped honey. This is low moisture content ready to extract that part, but this is all nectar. And this frame has too much nectar on it to extract. The moisture content would be too high and this would likely ferment. You see there's a lot of nectar though. Hopefully that shows up on the video, all that glistening wet nectar in there. Here's the back side of the frame. You see the plastic foundation that these frames start as, and the bees build that wax out. Perfect bees comb and they fill it. So again, little tiny patch of cap, but this is all uncapped nectar. So not ready for extraction yet. But plenty in there. You can kind of feel when you pick the box up too, that one's a little bit lighter than the first box, which is fully capped. This looks like a box of foundation. You can come and have a look in from the top here. So you see bees down between all the seams. And you see, for example, this frame here is mainly foundation. It doesn't look like there's any significant wax production on there. Let's just take that out and have a quick look. They're just starting to build a little wax here, but primarily that's a foundation frame. Little worker bees doing their thing. In the middle here, we've got, well, the looks of it, nectar and uncapped honey. Let's take a look and see. And then we'll get this box off and delve down into the brood chambers. So just move slowly. The bees are relaxed. They're not trying to light me up. As long as you're calm and careful not to squish bees and no sudden jerky movements, bees are pretty relaxed. That's why it's such a relaxing hobby. So again, you can see a lot of nectar in that frame there. Wet nectar, happy bees. Little foundation on the edge. They haven't quite finished building this frame out yet. That's just all Wet nectar, nowhere near ready for extraction, but they are filling it up, and it's a good indication of the nectar flow that's going on. And that's what I've been seeing in my other colonies over the course of the last couple of weeks. It had slowed down there for a while, and now it's really raging along again, the nectar flow. All right, let's take this last super off here. Okay. This is a queen excluder. I know not everybody uses them, I do. It's a steel grid that's large enough for the worker bees to get through, but not large enough for the queen with the big abdomen to get through. So it restrains her down to these bottom two boxes so that you don't get brood in your supers. Not everybody uses them, and that's fine. I choose to use them on all my colonies. One potential downside to them is if you happen to have a bit of brood above the excluder, a drone could get caught. There's a drone climbing on it now. Drones can get caught above it. Oh, that drone just flew away, but just take a quick look and make sure your queen's not on the bottom of the excluder before you go putting this down. And she's not. So we'll stand that up here also without squishing anybody if possible. All right, so here we are into the two brood boxes. If we just take a quick look from the top, we can see bees down every seam here. This is a very populous colony, and that makes sense. We're in early July, they peak out their population in summer and then start to decline. So we should be seeing a population that's still in increase or coming close to the peak of their population here shortly. And certainly this looks very populous, this hive. They look very calm, they look to be going about their business without causing any mischief. Well, there's something interesting. If you have a look over here, this little plastic thing that's sticking out is actually called temp queen. This has a synthetic queen pheromone in it. I use this for making up queenless nukes to keep the bees in the boxes. So this must have been a frame that was in one of those failed nukes I ended up giving this colony at some point. So for whatever reason, it smells and acts like a queen. From the bees' perspective, it'll keep them in the box that smell, but shouldn't be in a production colony like this. All right, I'm going to just give them a little puff of smoke here so that we can keep them all nice and calm here. When you're using your smoker, it's not a whip. You're not trying to beat the bees down with it. You're just trying to push them down a little bit so that you can safely work without squishing them. Basically, if I can see the bees are looking up at me between the seams, I give them a little squirt. So if we count these frames 1 through 10, left to right, your brood nest tends to be in the middle here. So our queen is probably in the center here somewhere. You tend to have honey on the outside, then pollen, and then the brood nest. So whilst it's not impossible our queen could be out here, the chances are she's more likely to be in the center. So if we pull one of these peripheral frames out, we're a little bit less likely to squish her. There's not a lot of room right now, right? So if we can get our first frame out without squishing our queen, it makes the rest of the exam a little bit easier. And often the brood nest sort of looks like an oval covering the two chambers like so. So we're going to try and take out frame 2 because frame 1 is pretty well propellized against the side of the box and be quite difficult. So again, using the paddle part of our hive tool, we're just going to break the propolis seal on each side of this frame without squishing anybody. And now use our hook end of the hive tool to pry up on this. Gently, like that game of Operation you played when you were a kid, where you're not trying to touch the sides or you set the buzzer off. You bring this up gently without scraping the next frame. Actually, we've got brood here, which is interesting. All the way out to frame 2, we have some cat brood, some larvae. We may have some eggs on the edges there. Take a look and see if I can see any eggs out on the edges there. There are some eggs out on the edges here. Over here, so the oldest larvae tend to be in the center, and then the queen lays out in a spiral. So over here there are some eggs. I don't know if they show up on the camera. I hope that they do. In here somewhere. Not sure if we can see that. Maybe we'll see some eggs on the frame a little bit easier. It's difficult with the cell phone camera. Well, here's a drone. This is a little boy bee. You can see they're quite a bit larger than the females. They have no stingers, so they're fun to play with. That's him here. You can see him next to a worker. So the female is the worker here, and the male here. His job is just to mate with the queen. So he's a lot bigger than the females, a lot bigger than the worker brood, than the worker bees. And you'll see the brood is actually larger too. This is worker brood, this brown cardboard looking stuff. When we look at this colony, we're seeing some nice nectar, a little pollen around the brood, empty space out here. This must have been a foundation frame that was given to this colony. Again, this is an overwintered queen. She made it through winter. She's a 2023 queen, and now she's got supers on for honey production this year. The bees look healthy. The brood looks healthy. I'm looking for brown larvae, chewed down brood, sac brood, chalk brood, American foul brood, perforated cappings, sunken cappings. We have a couple of cappings where bees are starting to emerge, but other than that, this looks pretty good. The bees themselves look healthy. I don't see any K-wing. I don't see any deformed wing bees. There's no black slimy bees, bees that are acting weird or twitchy or trembly to make me think that they have illness. These bees look happy and content. We have an appropriate population of bees for the amount of brood that we have there. It's a good looking frame. We've got eggs all the way out to the periphery, so we know we've had a queen in here in at least the last 3 days. Let's have a look on the other side. So here's some drone brood here actually. These little bullet-shaped or peanut-shaped raised up brood cells, these are male, these are drones. And they're a little bit larger because males are bigger than the females. The worker brood is here, so drone brood, worker brood. And again, we have a little nectar around the outside. Now, I don't know where my little frame rest thing's gone. I've been beekeeping a little over 10 years, I guess, and that frame rest has been lost in the barn for years. So I know there's that fancy gadget you can hang the frame on the side of the colony, and they're great. I don't know where mine is. So what I do these days is make sure my queen is not on this frame, so look really carefully. She's a lot larger than the other bees. And unless they have replaced her, she should have a red dot on her. From last year, there's our male again. Little drone here. A little larger than the females. Female, worker, drone, male. All right, so I'll take this frame and gently put it on the ground, and we'll just stack that up over here without squishing any bees. All right. Now we've made enough space that we can get the next frame out. We'll give them a little puff of smoke here because they're starting to look up through the frames at me, and we'll move on. Frame 3, we'll wedge that over also. Wow, is it hot out here? What do we have on this frame here? Try and do your inspection over the hive initially in case your queen's on there so you don't drop her. I've dropped a frame before, and as long as you're over the colony, hopefully it doesn't create too much carnage. Don't try and drop them if you can help it. Looks like we've got a queen cup down the bottom there. We'll check that in a minute. So we've got capped brood here. This is capped worker brood. Looks great. There's a lot of brood in this colony actually. Little nectar around the outside. Healthy looking bees and healthy looking brood. A little pollen bee bread out the side here, not a whole bunch. So this looks like queen cups down the bottom here. You see these little cup-shaped cells here. If that has an egg or a larvae in it, that's called a queen cell. It means they're getting ready to swarm. So if we look inside there, that's empty. That one likewise is empty. So is that. So is that. And that. And that's. These are queen cups, not queen cells. Practice or dummy runs if you like. Almost all healthy colonies will have queen cups in them. Queen cells mean that they are preparing to swarm. Don't see our queen on that frame. Flicker over here again. So again, lots of capped brood, healthy looking brood, beautiful brood pattern. They are starting to put nectar in these empty cells here. That'll give you an indication as to the flow that's going on. Here's some drone brood, these little heaped up little bullet-shaped brood. That's the male brood again over here. Female is this brown stuff. The heaped up stuff is the drone brood is here as well. These raised cells being male, the flat cells being female. The fact that they're starting to put nectar into the brood cells where the bees have hatched is a little worrying because that means they may be getting to a point where they're going to get honey bound, in which case they'll start swarm preparations. And that essentially happens when there's an abundance of bees and resources coming in. The queen runs out of places to lay and they start making swarm preparations. All right, little tiny puff of smoke because again, they're looking through the gaps at me there. Gently wedge apart your frames. Try not to squish any bees if you can help it. Unfortunately, there is an attrition rate with beekeeping, but do the best you can. As long as you move slowly and calmly, the bees are relatively quiet. All right, let's see what we got here. Well, we have a bunch of empty cells over this left side. We have some capped brood here. You can start to see bees that are just starting to chew their way through their capping there. Again, healthy looking brood, healthy looking bees. a little nectar and a little pollen on this frame, not a whole bunch. Don't see my queen on that side. Flick this over and have a look on the back. So we've got some drones and some workers here. Here's a bee emerging here. What else do we have going on over here? Don't see my queen. We do have a lot of eggs in this corner here. If you're able to zoom in and have a look at that space in there.